Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be joining us from. My name is Derek Warnick. I'm one of the co-producers of CME Palooza, and welcome to CME Palooza Spring 2023. I counted correctly, which can sometimes be a challenge for me. I think this is our 19th CME Palooza, which is a little hard to believe. So I want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us this morning and for joining us in all of our past CME Paloozas and hopefully for all future CME Paloozas as well. We have a great agenda lined up for you today. So let's get started with our breakfast session, which is sponsored by Med Learning Group, fostering partnerships and collaboration in a VR world. Our moderator today is Lauren Welch, who is a Vice President of Outcomes and Accreditation at Med Learning Group. But before I turn things over to her, of course, I want to thank all of our sponsors who help make CME Palooza possible. Academy for Continued Healthcare Learning, ACHL, Clinical Education Alliance, Med Learning Group. Our silver sponsors, Academic CME, DKB Med, Haymarket Medical Education, Helio CME, Platform Q Health Education, Red Med Ed, and Talem Health. Our bronze sponsors, Antidote Education Company, Bonum Continuing Education, CMEology, Excalibur Medical Education, Global Education Group, Infograph Ed, Iridium Continuing Education, MedIQ, PrimeEd, Peerview Institute for Medical Education, RMEI Medical Education, Vindico Medical Education, and Right Medicine. 3 different ways that you can ask questions. You can use the CME Palooza text line to send in a question 267-6660-CME or 0263. You can tweet your question using the CME Palooza hashtag. And if you open up the viewing window that you're watching this through in YouTube, you can actually click on the watch on YouTube, the little thing at the bottom corner. You can enter questions within the YouTube chat function. That is an easy way to do it. You can use any of these 3 ways, whichever you prefer. A lot of people like to text in the questions. I see I forgot to close my door, and the cat has already come in. He's starting early today. So you can ask any of the 3 ways. I'll monitor all 3 ways and make sure that the questions get to our panelists. We'll get to as many of them as we can. Poll everywhere. We'll be incorporating audience response questions during this presentation via the Creative Educational Concepts Audience Response System, which is Poll Everywhere. A big thank you to them for sponsoring that. So you can either download, I think we have 3 questions that we're going to go through. You can either download the Poll Everywhere app and join the presentation entitled CME Palooza 005. Why is it 005 and not 1? I don't know. Scott did it. Blame him. Or you can type in the following URL in the web browser that's below. Go ahead and do that now because we're going to kick things off pretty early on with a question. So if you can have that ready to go and open, that would be great. And then last slide, our speaker disclosure slide. Any opinions, discussions, and or conclusions expressed are those of our panelists and do not represent an endorsement by or a position of their employer, its parent company, or affiliates. I am going to bring up our first question. You'll have to bear with me. I have a number of different windows I'm popping through, so sometimes it takes me a moment to get them up. And also, I want to give a quick point before Lauren gets started. There's a video we're going to be showing. It's a great video. It's well produced. It looks fantastic. Sometimes it's a little glitchy when I play it on StreamYard. It has nothing to do with the quality of the video. It's the quality of the processing software that StreamYard used. So I just want to point that out in case it is a little glitchy, but you'll get the idea, I think. Okay, let me bring up our first question for Poll Everywhere. So go ahead and hopefully have that open and you can start responding. How would you like to learn about complex molecular or biological information? Through animations, through infographics, through posters, through PowerPoint, or through other? So go ahead and enter your responses now. Let me make sure I have it turned on. I do. We have not gotten any in. Do I have it started? I think I do. Maybe everyone is completely baffled, and so they are looking for you, Lauren, to help lead them on to information. I'm going to turn things over to you, and I'll go and make sure that I have Poll Everywhere running correctly. Let me bring up your slides, and we'll go forward there. Okay, over to you, Lauren.
Thank you, Derek. Yeah, it takes a little bit first thing in the morning with the polling questions, a big ask. But thank you very much for having us, Derek and Scott. We're really pleased to be able to open up this session. It's an event that, we always enjoy and gain a lot from. So thank you again for hosting it. This morning, we'll be talking about the use of technology in education. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, they started to respond to us.
Yeah. So animations is leading the way along with infographics. So that's just something to get us thinking about if we were in our learners' shoes, how we would like to learn about some of the things we educate on. And we'll be talking about the use of this virtual reality, but also a variety of technologies in our education, and kind of looking at some of its intangible benefits. So not just, how it changes knowledge and competence uptake, but a little more on what it does for our partnerships, and how that benefits a variety of stakeholders, as well as collaborations with patients. But before we get into it, I wanted to give the panel a chance to introduce themselves. I'll kick it off. I'm Lauren. I'm the VP of Outcomes and Accreditation at MedLearning Group. I've been here for almost 10 years now. And prior to that, I was at the Department of State working on some of our health and education programs abroad.
I'm Halini Bailuni. I'm the Associate Director of Strategic Partnerships, and I've been with the company about 4.5 years now.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Peg Bilal, the Head for Scientific Communications and Medical Operations at Sanofi US, and certainly great to be here today. Thank you for the invite.
Oh, thank you, Peg. We're really happy to have you here. I think many on the line will be really listening to your supporter perspective on the use of some of this technology and its benefits to our overall mission. So before I hand it over to Halini, who's really going to get into the meat of what we're trying to talk about, I just have some introductory slides as to what we use this, why we use this innovative technology in our education. As per that polling question shows, it is, number one, beneficial to have this sort of moving animation, moving picture when you're trying to understand, say, how a new class of therapy may work inside the body, or how to integrate a new diagnosis guidelines into your everyday practice. Seeing that in the works via some type of video or animation, and when it's virtual reality, actually feeling you're actually inside the body yourself really helps learners get those complex concepts, and kind of reduces the cognitive load required to really comprehend them. But going beyond that, and what we're going to really focus on today, is how these technologies also foster partnerships. It's when you develop a partnership with, say, an association, and you really want them to validate your content or to help with audience generation, having these kind of assets that they can share with their members kind of makes it a two-way street, and beneficial for everything. Same with, say, a patient advocacy group. And then when you also take these tools and make them script it in a way that's helpful for a patient to understand, you're then not only educating your learners, but giving them something to educate their patients with too, which can help with a whole host of things, be it adherence and collaboration and care, shared decision-making, and all that. So on the next slide, we kind of this is just a reminder that while our title might be virtual reality, and that is sort of what we're going to show next as our latest use of that type of technology and what we've been doing the last couple of years with it. beyond just the headsets. So what we're talking about applies to a whole host of innovative ways to educate, be it with augmented reality, with 3D animations, with infographics, with simulations, posters that, learners can design themselves. So it's not just virtual reality. We can all be very creative in how we use these different formats. And on the next slide. So I think actually, Derek, we can pull up the video. So what we're going to show is sort of a sizzle of one of our VR rooms. This is how we've been using virtual reality over the last couple years. And I think actually watching the video helps you understand it more than I can describe it, which is kind of the point of our talk. But it's a cylinder that learners go in, 8 to 10 learners at a time.
I'm gonna start it again. Let's start over again. I got a little. Yeah, I'm gonna try. Let me try starting. Yeah, it's a little glitchy. Sorry. Thanks, Derek. So yeah, as you can see, it's a large cylinder that you enter about 8 to 10 learners at a time. And when you're in there, it really feels like you're kind of part of those animations. People are reaching out, trying to touch the cell. And the faculty comes in a way that it almost seems like they're standing there. So it's really engaging at another level with learners, and it's a short bite of information, but outside of the room, there's access to a variety of tools for continuous learning, links to longer enduring programs that our faculty do to associate it with this. But just like everyone in the last couple of years, we had to find a way to also do this digitally. And now that has benefited us now because whenever we do one of these live, we also have it online. So we get a hybrid audience and vastly extend our reach. So Derek, if you want to click on that second link, you might be able to kind of demo what one of these virtually look like. But it's basically everything you just saw, but you can click on that circle that says virtual reality room and it would take you right inside. If you want to get credit, you do your pre-test. We can skip that. And you enter the virtual reality and see the animation just from your computer. Not quite as immersive, but still a really useful learning tool. And many associations have then kept this on their website.
Hello, and welcome to the virtual reality room experience.
And then when you go outside of the booth, you can, access some of the tools. You'll be able to, design a personalized poster or read about the faculty, read about the online program that goes along with the activity. So just another example of how, these are used now. I know we've presented before about how we integrate them into symposia and the like, which we still do, but they really become something that our partners like having as a standoff education in addition to any additional longer education that's happening. And it vastly extends your audience because it's available throughout the conference. So a great way to highlight CME to our overall healthcare industry. And the next slide. And then, like I mentioned with the posters, and in addition to the partnerships, another way that we like to measure the outcomes of our programming that includes these tools is to make sure that we have tools that reach the patient. And then we follow up with our learners and to see how they're using these tools with their patients. So it provides yet another level of outcome in terms of how often you're sharing these, with whom you're sharing them. Are they meant for your own continuous learning, or do you use them for patient education? And if so, where do you have them in your office? And what kind of dialogue does it spark? And we get a lot of attitudinal outcomes out of that, which I think are, really just as valuable as what we're getting from our pre-post test personally. But on the next slide, you can just some examples of, what we hear back in regards to these tools really tell a useful story for CME. Patients asking more questions than they might otherwise. People thankful that they now have a tool that have Spanish subtitles that they can share with their patients, and that they can share within their team to increase knowledge across their practice. And then the next slide, I'm actually currently updating this data, so it's a little dated, but it kind of just gives you a quick look at, yes, indeed, learners do value these technologies in their education, not only just in terms of its engagement, but how they use the technology post-education, both in terms of recalling what they learned, applying what they learned, and using them with patients. But that's all just in way of introducing what this is. And then I will turn it over to Helene to really dig into some of those more intangible outcomes that I mentioned that we draw with the use of these tools. I think we're going to use one more polling question first, though.
Thanks, Lauren. Derek, I think we can dive into the next slide and launch that polling question, if you don't mind.
Sorry, too many screens. Hold on. I got it.
I don't know how you do it.
Got to stop that. Present. Share screen. Poll everywhere. There it is. People see it on their cameras. Okay, there we go. They're already responding. Look at that.
Beautiful. Awesome. So the majority are looking like 1 to 25%.
Nice. I'll bring up your slides.
Awesome. Thank you. Awesome. We can go to the next slide. Nope, one back. Sorry, this one. Thank you. And thank you, Lauren, for a great introduction to some of the technology that we utilize. Of course, we wanted to highlight our virtual reality, but we also want to dive into what that looks like for our association partners, our healthcare systems that we work with, patient advocacy groups, and how that really fosters a wonderful connection. Of course, when we work with our partners, we really want to nurture the relationship. It's not just about meeting them, working on an initiative, and then that's it, and see it next year when we do this again. You always want to have a shared goal or bond in place, and that's usually the patient. Of course, we're constantly doing the educating, but all of our stuff is always patient-centered, and so are they. We always have ongoing outcomes, and we want to brainstorm new ideas with them after the initiative is over. You want to have continuous communication and follow-up throughout the initiative while you're working on it, and you want to share the final details with them, like, hey, we finally launched this podcast or this video. We'd love your take on this. Share it with your patients, etc. And of course, it's always going to be a really mutual, beneficial, symbiotic relationship. What can we provide to you? What can you provide to us? And how can we support your mission? And Lauren mentioned, of course, we want to talk about expanding their membership base and reaching more learners, but it goes really beyond that. And of course, that we feel like, technology is certainly something that everyone can utilize and everyone can benefit from. But I just have one small thing to mention, that unfortunately, technology can't get into the hands of everyone. And there are, vulnerable populations where they don't even have Wi-Fi. And that's something that, we all took for granted this morning. We all popped on and we knew our Wi-Fi was going to work and we were going to have this presentation and the 19th Palooza, and it was all hunky-dory for everyone, but that's not always the case. So I did want to mention that as well. And that's why we still have infographics and downloadable animations for providers to share with their patients. And some of the other patient tools that we create that don't always fit into that technology that everyone can access. We can go into the next slide. And as I mentioned before, everything that we do is going to be patient-centered and patient-focused. And here are just a handful of the associations that I've had the pleasure of working with and getting to know over the course of the past 6 months or so. And you can see that they're all from different therapeutic areas. And we, Med Learning Group, as many other providers, education providers, we're really on the macro level here. We focus on so many disease states, and these associations, these patient advocacy groups, these medical societies really hone in on the disease specifics surrounding what they specialize in. They're really the boots on the ground doing a lot of the work in terms of patient advocacy, changing policies, working on the legislation, and working with Congress. I mean, I met with the National Blood Clot Alliance and found that they've been working with the CDC for a decade, working on their Stop the Clot initiative. And they're also working with Biden's Moonshot initiative. Things I would have never, ever known had I not got to sit down with them, have a cup of coffee, really learn about what they do. And I want to know, how can I help? How can Med Learning Group help? How can we as an industry help change the, patient scope for all of this? And we always want to support diversity, equity, and inclusion across all therapeutic areas. We want to understand, the patient population that they teach. What barriers are they facing? Is it access to care? And what kind of access to care? Is it geographic location? Is it economic status? Do they live, in an area, again, where Wi-Fi is not accessible? How can we get these tools and resources into the hands of patients? And, usually by us, it's usually by way of the clinician. Of course, our consumer is often the clinician, the doctors, the nurses, the PAs, everyone. And then we can utilize the reach of the advocacy groups to get it directly into the hands of patients. And that's exactly why we've introduced more patient tools in addition to clinician resources. And we can go into the next slide. And I wanted to introduce, talk about when we introduced virtual reality to the AVAHO. AVAHO is the Association of VA Hematology Oncology, and one of my favorite groups to work with. They are incredible. We support diversity, equity, inclusion, and I think, that often really means communities of color and people that don't get heard too often, really vulnerable populations. And I think we kind of forget that our veterans are part of that vulnerable group that we need to reach a little better. They often live in rural communities where access to care is really difficult, and they seek care in the community rather than in the VA, and that causes a lot of gaps in their care. So the Association of VA Hematology Oncology is working to bridge those gaps on all fronts, updating access to certain treatments in the VA, updating even their firewall and how they communicate with different associations, and how they communicate with different healthcare systems, and how we can sort of make community care and VA care kind of mesh together. So we went to it was our first annual meeting with them, and we displayed non-small cell lung cancer, basal cell carcinoma, and cutaneous squamous cell carcinoma, virtual reality and whiteboard animations. And the love in the room and that we felt, and the impact that we created was incredible. It was the first time virtual reality was really introduced to the association, and they have about 1,000 clinicians. So we work with associations large and small, and they're all equally as important. So we went in there just wanting to share these animations with everybody, give them a different perspective on how they can learn and how we can teach. And it was wonderful. We had the VR headsets. I know Lauren showed the big VR cylinder that we have, but we also do the headsets. And you can see on the picture on the right-hand side, we have all of those glasses, or they look like glasses rather. Those actually attach to your phone, and you scan the QR code that we have, and it turns your phone into a virtual reality headset, and your room, whatever room you're in, becomes immersive. And we had clinicians take all of these home. I think we gave away at least 1,000 to share with their patients in the room, so they can dive into the video that showed, the mechanism, action, and pathogenesis of cutaneous squamous cell carcinoma. So you got to really show the patient what that looks like, and why, this small little, what looked like a small, mark on your face, when you go to get a Mohs surgery, why it becomes this large hole. And the patient can't quite always understand what margins mean or why you got to get so much out. So having this video there, the clinicians really felt that would be so moving for the patient to understand and really connect with their provider in the room. So we left immediately, and we were like, we need to make this stuff for patients. We need to make this more patient friendly. So we decided to take our VR animations that we make for clinicians, switch things up a little bit, do a nice voiceover so patients can understand it and they can bond with their doctor in the room. I mean, you are, when you go to the doctor's office, you're having some of the most important and intimate conversations of your life that, can change everything. And if you're not able to connect and understand with your doctor what you're talking about, or your clinician what you're talking about, that's really scary. So having that technology to bridge that gap is incredibly meaningful. You can go to the next slide. So like I said, we felt that love in the room, we felt the impact in the room, and then months later, we got to look at our outcomes. And we had over almost 2,600 learners, both at the booth in person and online, and it was amazing. We had over 1,200 posters created. Even the posters are so helpful. You can print as many as you want. You can put them in the bathroom, you can put them in your office, you can put them in wherever you want them. And patients are looking at these posters and they have questions to ask, and it's incredible. We had over 800 animation downloads. So in addition to the virtual reality that we create, we also have 2D whiteboard animations that are available for download just about with everything that we do. So clinicians can go back and reference these videos at their leisure, and sometimes pull them up on their phone with their patients in the room. And we had over 2,100 unique learners to our website. And I believe, Lauren, you had mentioned almost 20% of those visitors came back more than once, which was amazing to see. And that was just with one time working with Avaho. And we've since, fostered a wonderful relationship with them, and we can hope to continue to work with them in the future. We can go into the next slide. And overall, we want to talk about how technology in CME can advance patient care. As I previously mentioned, it's going to really increase patient understanding. Health literacy, of course, is always a concern that we have, throughout the country. And that's why we create not only virtual technology, but there's varying resources as well. We want to create the posters. We also do what we call patient journeys, which is sort of an interactive infographic, if you will. You go to the doctor's office and you get a brochure, and sometimes that works well for patients. And you have other patients that prefer a little bit of technology. So that's where our patient journey can come in. And that's where the association can help, share that patient journey with all of their members. So while we would share it with the clinician and hope the clinician shares it with their patients, the associations really get it right into the hands of those living with the disease and their caregivers. We also want to foster better open communication between patient and provider. The internet and, all of technology, I'm bonding with someone across the world, over a meme. We're all commenting and laughing and all this stuff. So imagine, the bond that it creates across the globe for us. Imagine what it can do in a small room, when you have 15 minutes with your patient. And you're going to see a rise in awareness, early detection, And that's really the goal here. While we create new treatments for diseases, we really want to increase awareness so those patients can have access to care. And that's what a lot of these associations are working on. They know the treatment landscape and the trends and what's coming and how things have grown over the years, as much as we do, if not more than we do. So they're able to really talk to their patients about what's coming. And I've seen that really there isn't a lack of, I don't want to say this in the wrong way. There's a ton of resources out there that we create for information for patients. We also kind of really have to work on how do we get it into the right hands. And that's where these patient association partnerships really come in. And sometimes we learn that, navigating care is often a huge barrier for patients. And that's what also these associations work on. They have, care navigation tools and people to help you guide you. And some of these people just don't know these things exist. So it's truly an honor to work with these associations and help share their resources on our end, and they get to share our stuff on their side. And you're going to see a lot more adherence to treatment when patients understand what's going on. They become more inquisitive about their care. They're going to be, access, they're going to have questions about what treatments are coming and they're going to be really in the know here. And they're going to be probably asking a lot of questions about clinical trials. Historically speaking, we've seen a lot of mistrust in the medical community, especially from, communities of color and lack of representation for communities of color in clinical trials. And for us to really diversify those cohorts that are coming in is going to be incredible. And we do that by way of educating patients, empowering them. And patient advocacy can be so many things. It's education, it's engagement, and it's empowerment. And it warms my heart when we're able to help them in any way that we can. And it's wonderful learning from all the associations what they do. I think we have one last question, Derek. Where do you see the benefits of including technology in your educational programming? Visual learning for sure. But yeah, absolutely all of the above. We have tools to offer our partners, both clinicians and for patients. It does certainly assist with audience generation. We're able to reach our target audiences more directly sometimes. Things are changing. It's certainly a lot of tools to offer your patients. Again, it's going to help you communicate better with your patients. It's certainly tools to offer partners as well. I've sat down, I've had coffee with a lot of our partners and really just pick their brains about what they need, what their patients are seeing, what they're seeing. And, the United States is going to shift more to value-based care. So patient outcomes is really going to is huge. So I'm glad to see most of everyone says all of the above. So Peg, I'm going to turn it over to you to share your supporter perspective from what all of this means.
Okay, great. Thank you, Helena. And it's certainly all inspiring and grateful for your work.
Thank you.
I don't have slides today, just giving the perspective from a supporter. And I'd like to actually speak to you today about two journeys. One is that supporter journey, and one that is always our North Star is the patient journey. And the supporter journey was actually an unexpected one, and it may seem rather simple, but it was a bit of a lift. And I share that I was directly involved with that specific journey. And I'm going to take you back to 2019. So have we ever funded a virtual reality room before? Yes. At that time, the medical team was really excited to fund the innovation and what was expected, greater retention, and what was delivered. Yeah, exactly those metrics. So as Lauren had said earlier, I have repeatedly had the experience when using technology and programs that we funded where, they're really, the metrics are never a question. They continuously deliver to us and we're able to, really aim and close those educational gaps. But, taking us from 2019 and moving ahead to the pandemic and then post-pandemic and then to our new normal, right? So I find myself live back in the office, meeting with the Educational Grant Review Committee. And so I'm the IME representative, and we're reviewing submissions. And I share with you that I was in a unique position in that I was working with a new area of business within our medical team. And this team, I soon learned, was much more accustomed to funding traditional methods of education. And certainly there's a space for traditional, but what was before us was a proposal that it was unique, it was innovative, it was a live experience post-COVID, and it was layered with that online digital learning lab that Lauren referred to, and most importantly, I learned resources for HCPs to use with patients. So a very comprehensive program. But in this review, I found myself in that unique position to educate on what I refer to now as a revolution and not just an evolution of education. And you know, I quickly had to bring evidence to the table, you know, to explain to this team, you know, how this program would deliver and certainly close the gaps and deliver that component to the patient. There was still a degree of hesitation with the agreement to approve. So, you know, some skepticism. In fact, the conversation ended to say, well, if you say so, Peg. So I was grateful for their trust, and I really had no moment of hesitation whatsoever. So we zoom ahead to 2023, and we see the virtual reality room that launched mid-February, and it was a significant number of participants, certainly to no surprise for myself, and it was a tremendous amount of support and recognition across our organization. So not only medical, but those functions and teams outside of medical, really recognizing the innovation and certainly understanding that the delivery of the education was certainly going to accelerate the knowledge gain and that retention that we were looking for. So what I had before me was my relatively traditional team had experienced a new reality. So I'm tremendously grateful for that experience, for them to have that. And really the uniqueness here with this journey was that in my experience, my teams within medical affairs have really been on board with innovation. As I said, in 2019, the team was very excited and they were like, yeah, let's do this. So my value proposition generally has been towards key stakeholders outside of medical. So, you know, kind of really critical to make sure that understanding that it could be anywhere in that continuum where some education needs to occur. So while this was definitely a heavier lift than expected, it was really great to be part of this team's transformation. So a very positive experience from a supporter perspective, from my medical team. And for that second journey, the North Star, the patients, I have to share with you the same medical team was, and you saw it was graft versus host disease. It's a transplant team. And I share with you that above all other teams that I work with, no matter how busy a day is for them, they never lose sight of the patient. And it's really not uncommon. And this is where I learned this from them, is that, oh no, that's going to take too long. Patients are waiting. And so their passion is contagious, and we're grateful to have that experience with them day in and day out. But significant to their decision, and certainly they understood the live component, but very, very important to them was the component that included tools and resources for HCPs to use with patients. So the customized posters, the 3D animations were the key elements of the program that really got them to that approval. And so I think, you know, overall, you know, key takeaways for me was really that, you know, we're always within a journey. It never ends. To educate stakeholders, whether they're, you know, within our perimeter on a day-to-day basis or outside of medical. And that's generally, you know, the value proposition that we're always, you know, is running in parallel with the work that we do day to day. But really important to educate stakeholders and to ensure that comprehensive education for both HCPs and patients. So it's just, I'm so grateful to hear, you know, Lauren and Helena to explain and share with us all the great work that they're doing. And it's really a rewarding experience to be part of the transformation that's in front of us. So many thanks to you, Lauren, and certainly to you, Helene. and for your teams for the continued dedication to both innovation and impact. Both are key and essential, to our overall success. So again, we're very, very grateful, and it is great to be a part of this journey. And many thanks to all of you in the audience today for your time, and certainly your feedback is always welcome, and I'm glad that I had the opportunity to share our journey here today with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Peg. I think that's really valuable to see. We provided the perspective of, from our view, stakeholders such as our partners and our learners, but to hear how you made this work within your organization and then how it touched other parts of your organization was really, really fascinating. So I appreciate your time. We've had quite a few questions come in on the chat. There's a couple up front I can kind of just hit. And then Peg, I see there's a couple for you. One was about the video. It showed that where the VR room was, and can you offer CME credit? And so that's a great question. We partner with the associations, and they kind of have to see where they can find the floor space. Very often it will be in a poster hall or out by where the symposiums are, or highlighted in the entrance away from the exhibit hall. When it's not in the exhibit hall or anything that an exhibit hall might do in a location with that, we do offer quarter credits, but if it is in the exhibit hall or in close proximity to it, we do not offer credit. And we either way, we encourage learners to then go to the online programming, which is usually about an hour long, to learn more and receive credit that way. But we definitely would follow the guidelines on that. And then is the movement or spatial location important in the learning? Most definitely. These animations, while they're great, they do take a lot of thought is put into how they're designed. Our faculty, when they sign on to the program, sign on to help with these animations, and they will take a very analytical look. If this cell is the right size compared to that molecule, is the coloring okay? Is the movement in the direction that it should be? That is very carefully analyzed from a scientific eye, because you want to get it right. It's got to be, if this is going to be such a powerful visual tool, it needs to accurately represent what is going on inside the body. So the spatial location is extremely important, and it takes a lot of work to get it right. And one more, how do you parse out the emotional response from the novelty versus the objective measures of efficacy and impact? And may the novelty at some point actually add to the cognitive load? That's a great question. Very thoughtful. So in all of our evaluations where we include these animations, we include not only did the animation enhance your learning, yes or no, but a multiple choice question as to in which ways. And it's not just will it enhance your recall, but it's specific to those learning objectives. And so the answers to those questions will tell us if it did actually have a specific impact on learning versus just the novelty of it. The novelty might draw the learners, but then what our actual outcomes show tell you its efficacy and impact. And we did a study a couple years ago that compared knowledge competence gains for programming that included some of this innovative work versus our more traditional CME, which, as Peg said, definitely has its place. And these animations don't fit for every program. It has to fit within the learning objectives. It has to fit with the right audience. There's a lot of thought that goes into whether or not to include these in instructional designs. But those results did show a significant increase among those that programming that had similar objectives that included this technology over those that did not. We have a paper on our website that kind of gets into that a little bit more if you'd like to look into it. And one more before I turn it over to Peg. In what ways has this been measured in outcomes? So kind of like what I just said, there's both within each program we measure it, and then also with the tools and how they're used in practice. We do follow-up surveys about that. We get some attitudinal outcomes. And then we also have done this study that looks at it across the board, across a variety of therapeutic areas. Okay, Peg, what challenges have you found during the grant support process? And then have there been any challenges showing the value after the event?
So I would say, one of the challenges that I just described was that I was a little caught off guard in that I had made an assumption that this new team, and this is transition business that had moved into our medical affairs team. And so I maybe, from that perspective, doing my homework and I kind of had an essence of understanding, and I'll share with you that this team had traditionally funded a lot of symposia, and I think it was just a lack of exposure. And so in that initial grant review with them, it was really about, I literally pulled out my slide deck from 2019, and I showed them the impact of the innovation and certainly what that program would do, for their overall educational gaps. And as Lauren said, and I think this is very key, what the objective was to educate on the mechanism of action of this compound and compounds within this therapeutic class. And so what better way to do it than through a 3D animation? It was magnificent. It was fantastic. And again, the overall objective was certainly achieved through that. So I think it's really making sure that those who are, a part of that educational grant review. And so we're not just, it was closer to home for me. It was my medical director. Certainly there's legal, there's compliance, et cetera. So I think just being very mindful of different stakeholders and understanding that they're definitely in different parts of the continuum in terms of making those educational grant submission decisions. So I think that that's important. I'm sorry, Lauren, the second part of it the first was about the overall process and support.
And then showing the value post-program.
Yeah, and showing the value post-program is something that we've adopted internally within my organization, and that generally, at the beginning of the year, we have put into place is our overall value proposition. And so after every program, in advance of every program, we're certainly extending through the organization. And I say that in a compliant manner. I don't know that if all organizations have this opportunity, but I ladder it up so that in a medical strategy team meeting that's cross-functional across the organization, I'm on the agenda. At different pre-con meetings for congresses, I would imagine most are involved. I make sure that I'm on the agenda. So before a program launches, plant the seed, and then after the program has launched, following up with metrics and certainly understanding the overall impact of the investment. I think that's really critical.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Do we have experience applying VR to the live CME? So yes, those VR rooms we showed are live. We also do integrate 3D and animations into some of our live symposia, also our virtually live symposia via our virtual platform. We've integrated them. We have also done live symposia where we have enough goggles for everyone to view it in VR. We have some new methods on the horizon that we're super excited about that are going to be a little easier to integrate VR without the use of big headsets. So some of that will be rolling out this spring, this summer. We're really excited about. But we have done it, and there'll be some neat new ways to look forward to seeing. Have faculty been hesitant to participate in such complex education? it's actually quite the opposite. These are thought leaders in their fields. They're looking for this innovation, and they really enjoy working on these animations. In more cases than not, they actually spend a lot more time than one might anticipate working on the visuals. I think it's fun and different for them, and they want to get it right too, right? Their name is all over it. So I think they appreciate being associated with them, and they appreciate very much getting the tool right to be used correctly. They have fun with it. And then one more, the most important or relevant measurement you have witnessed from these types of education. That's a great question. I think, kind of bringing it full circle, we can, put numbers up on a slide about how our pre-posts show increased knowledge and competence change with these technologies. But I think what we were trying to focus on, I think Helene did a great job showing, is those intangible outcomes, how they facilitate partnerships across a great variety of stakeholders, all involved in the overall mission of improving patient care and outcomes, and get us working together and talking together. And then that facilitates change in a way that, in so many ways that we can't really specify just in one. And also the tools and how they're used for collaboration in the practice setting. I think those are the two best outcomes that we get from these, that I personally find the most interesting. And I don't see any more questions on that. We really do appreciate everyone's time this morning. Thank you again, Derek and Scott, for the platform. Thank you, Peg, for joining us.
Thank you.
I think there is one more question for Peg.
Oh.
Thought you were going to get out of here without any more
Yeah.
questions. Unless I missed it and you read it, but did you or did you or management see value of the patient-facing resources that were provided? If so, did it resonate throughout your group?
Absolutely. And it's all of the above here today, and that, I do think, and from my organization, from my perspective, is that I would say that most, if not all, we're pretty high percentage of programs that we fund do have a patient education component, and the focus is, and when I opened with, and just to share with you just a little behind the scenes, is that my discussion with you today, I had not even shared with Lauren, and as it was unfolding, and I saw how the alignment that existed there, and that, my opening statement to you was, I want to tell you about our North Star and the patient journey. And so the focus really being, yes, there's ACP education that needs to occur, but if we don't have that element of the patient, then we haven't done our job. And so a tremendous amount of support within our organization. You will continually see in every presentation, in every town hall, the patient is at the center, right? And so it's very much supported, and there is a tremendous lift in our value proposition, having that education, being able to certainly partner with groups like Lauren's team to be able to deliver that. So absolutely, that's kind of easy in that I have that support, and there's certainly a high degree of attention, and certainly, an understanding that it's critical to the overall success of delivering the education to ensure that we're including the patient. Thanks, Derek.
Yep, great. Thanks, Peg. And thanks, Lauren. Thanks, Helene. Great session to get the day started. A lot of good food for thought for everyone. So thank you very much. And thanks for everyone for all the questions that you asked. That was also great. Let me bring up my slides. Okay, a survey. Please click on the survey link on the live page. If you go back to it, there's our CME Palooza Spring Survey. We are interested in your feedback on all our sessions. A lot of sessions that we end up doing have some seed that has come from the survey and people's response. So we're always interested in that. So if you have a few minutes by the end of the day, please take the survey. And then lastly, to view the next session, which is, ChatGPT, medical education savior or newest stand-up act. Not a more hot topic, I don't think, in any field than ChatGPT. So that will be starting directly at 10 a.m. Eastern at the top of the hour. So you have about 5 minutes to go grab another cup of coffee or whatever you might need. So to do that, just go back to the live page. There is a separate link that you'll need to click on for the session, and then it'll get started pretty promptly at the top of the hour. And with that, I think that will close out our first session of the day. Thanks again, everyone. And we will talk to all of you later on. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.